Dad's silent revenge.
The happiest day of my daughter's life was supposed to be the day she got married. But when she slipped that small piece of paper into my jacket pocket while we walked down the aisle, everything changed. 5 words written in Beverly's handwriting that made my blood run cold. Dad, help me, he hurts. My name is Roy Bennett, I'm 58 years old, and I thought I'd seen everything life could throw at me. After 30 years running construction crews, you learn to spot problems before they become disasters. You develop instincts about people who you can trust, who's trying to scam you, who's dangerous. But I missed the biggest problem of all, the man my daughter married. The morning started like any other wedding. St. Michael's church was packed with about 200 guests, white roses everywhere, and that nervous energy you get when families come together. Beverly looked beautiful in her grandmother's dress, the same one my late wife Martha wore 32 years ago. The dress had been stored in our attic for decades, wrapped in tissue paper, and hoped that someday our daughter would wear it too. Vernon was standing at the altar in his black tuxedo, looking every bit the successful insurance manager he claimed to be. Clean cut, confident smile, expensive watch catching the light from the stained glass windows. The kind of guy who looked good on paper and knew exactly what to say to parents. I should have trusted my gut from the beginning. When Beverly first brought Vernon home 18 months ago, something felt off about him. He was too smooth, too quick with the right answers. The guy never let Beverly finish a sentence without jumping in to clarify what she meant. During family dinners, he'd order for her at restaurants, answer questions directed at her, even correct her when she told stories about her own life. But he had money, good manners, and Beverly seemed happy. At least that's what I told myself. After Martha died 3 years ago, Beverly had been so lonely. She'd moved back home for 8 months to help me deal with the grief, and I wanted her to find someone who'd take care of her the way Martha and I had tried to do. The church was beautiful that afternoon. St. Michael's is one of those old Catholic churches with high ceilings, wooden pews worn smooth by generations of families, and afternoon sunlight streaming through stained glass windows that painted gentle colors across the stone floors. The smell of white roses and candle wax filled the air, mixed with the faint scent of old wood and incense. Beverly's friends from Jefferson Elementary, where she teaches 4th grade, filled the left side of the church. 20-something women in pastel dresses, chattering quietly about how perfect everything looked. They'd been her support system since college, and seeing them all together reminded me of birthday parties and graduation celebrations over the years. Vernon's family took up most of the right side, his parents who'd driven down from Portland, a few cousins, and some colleagues from Mutual Trust Insurance, where he worked as a district manager. His father was a retired bank executive. His mother had been a real estate agent. They looked like the kind of people who belonged at country club dinners and charity fundraisers. My sister Dorothy was sitting in the front row, dabbing her eyes with tissues. She'd helped raise Beverly after Martha died, stepping in when I was too lost in my own grief to be much good as a single father. Dorothy had been suspicious of Vernon from day one, but she'd kept her opinions to herself for Beverly's sake. When the music started, everyone stood up. The organist began playing Canon in D, and the bridesmaids started their slow walk down the aisle. Beverly appeared at the back of the church holding a small bouquet of white lilies, Martha's favorite flowers. She looked nervous, which I figured was normal. Every bride gets nervous, right? But as I got closer, I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile seemed forced. Her makeup was perfect, but I could tell she'd been crying earlier. There were tiny stress lines around her eyes that I recognized from when she was a kid dealing with bullies at school. I offered her my arm and we started walking. That's when she leaned close and whispered, "Dad, please don't read it now." I felt the paper slip into my pocket. Her hand was shaking, and not from wedding day jitters. The walk down that aisle felt like it took forever. Every step, I could feel that note burning a hole in my jacket. Beverly kept her eyes straight ahead, but I could see the fear she was trying to hide behind her bridal smile. The photographer was snapping pictures, guests were smiling and waving, but all I could think about was what my daughter had written on that piece of paper. Vernon was watching us with this big smile, but when I looked closer, his eyes were cold. He wasn't looking at Beverly like a man in love looks at his bride. He was looking at her like she was property he owned, like a car or a house he just bought, and was proud to show off. The ceremony went on for about 45 minutes. Father McKenna, who'd baptized Beverly as a baby, talked about love and commitment and building a life together. Vernon held Beverly's hands during the vows, but I watched him grip them too tightly when she hesitated on the obey part. When they exchanged rings, Vernon gripped Beverly's hand so tight I saw her wince. Nobody else noticed because everyone was focused on the romantic moment, but I saw it. That grip wasn't love, it was control. The reception was at the Riverside Country Club, about 10 minutes from the church. The ballroom was decorated with more white roses and gold ribbons, round tables with white tablecloths filling the room. There was a dance floor in the center with a 6-piece band setting up in the corner. The venue had cost Vernon's parents a fortune, probably 15 grand for the whole package. I waited until we got to the reception before reading the note. I stepped outside onto the club's back patio, away from all the noise and celebration. The sun was starting to set around 7 p.m., painting the sky orange and pink over the Columbia River. I could hear the band doing sound checks through the windows, testing microphones and tuning guitars. My hands were shaking when I unfolded that piece of paper. 5 words that hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Dad, help me. He hurts. I read it 3 times before it sank in. My daughter was in trouble, and I just walked her down the aisle to marry the man who was hurting her. 30 years of construction work had taught me to stay calm under pressure, but this was different. This was my little girl. I went back inside and started watching Vernon more carefully. During dinner, he kept his hand on Beverly's arm the whole time, not romantic controlling. When people came over to congratulate them, Vernon did all the talking. Beverly just sat there with this fake smile, nodding at the right moments like a puppet. Around 8 p.m., I pulled my phone out and started recording whenever Vernon thought nobody was watching. I'd learned about documentation during my years as a construction foreman, dealing with workplace accidents and insurance claims. If you want results, you need proof. The phone's camera was good enough to catch his body language, the way he squeezed Beverly's shoulders when she tried to talk to her cousin Sarah. I caught him telling Beverly to shut up and smile when she wasn't being enthusiastic enough about opening wedding gifts. His voice was low, but I was close enough to hear it. The recording picked up every word. The band started playing around 8:30 p.m. and couples moved to the dance floor. I asked Beverly for a father-daughter dance, something we'd planned months ago. Vernon hesitated before letting her go, which should have been my first red flag weeks ago. As we danced to Unforgettable, Martha's favorite song, I kept my voice low. The band was loud enough to cover our conversation. Beverly, what did you mean in that note? Her eyes filled with tears, but she kept smiling for the photographers. Dad, I made a terrible mistake. What kind of mistake, honey? She looked around to make sure Vernon couldn't hear us. He was talking to his boss from the insurance office, but his eyes kept drifting back to us. He controls everything. My phone, my bank account, who I can talk to. He says it's because he loves me and wants to protect me. My jaw clenched. In construction, you learn to recognize different types of dangerous people. Vernon was the calculating kind, the ones who plan every move. Has he hit you? She nodded slightly, twice. But he always apologizes after, brings me flowers, says he'll change. I thought maybe after we got married, once he felt secure. I felt anger burning in my chest, but I had to stay calm. Getting emotional wouldn't help Beverly. Why didn't you call off the wedding? I tried to tell him yesterday I wanted to wait. That's when he hit me the second time. Her voice was barely a whisper. He said if I embarrassed him in front of everyone, I'd regret it. He said nobody would believe me anyway, because everyone thinks he's so perfect. I looked over at Vernon. He was watching us from across the room, that same cold stare I'd noticed during the ceremony. When he saw me looking, he smiled and raised his wine glass in our direction. Beverly, we're getting you out of this tonight. But Dad, everyone's here. The gifts, the money everyone spent on this wedding, none of that matters. Your safety matters. We finished the dance and I walked Beverly back to the table. Vernon immediately put his arm around her shoulders, gripping a little too tight. What were you two talking about? He asked with that practiced smile. Just reminiscing, I said. You know how fathers get sentimental at weddings. I spent the next hour making a plan. My construction background had taught me about emergency protocols and chain of command. You assess the situation, gather resources, and execute with precision. I needed allies, and I needed evidence. First, I talked to Dorothy. I found her in the ladies' room hallway and quickly explained what was happening. Her face went white. I knew something was wrong, she said. The past few months, Beverly's been different, quieter, always checking her phone like she was afraid of missing a call. I need you to get Beverly's purse and coat from the bridal suite, I told her. Meet us at my truck in 20 minutes. Next, I called my lawyer, Jim Patterson. He didn't answer. It was Saturday night, but I left a voicemail explaining I needed emergency domestic violence legal advice. Jim had handled business contracts for me over the years, but I knew he also did family law. Then I called my old crew chief, Danny Martinez, who'd become a police officer after leaving construction 5 years ago. He was working the night shift at Fairfield PD. Danny, it's Roy Bennett. I need help with a domestic violence situation. My daughter, Jesus, Roy, where are you? Riverside Country Club. Can you meet us at the station in an hour? Absolutely. Bring any evidence you have. I pulled Beverly aside again around 10 p.m., telling Vernon I needed to discuss some family business about Martha's jewelry. Vernon started to object, but I cut him off with the authority I'd used managing construction crews for 3 decades. It's family business. Vernon. Give us a few minutes. We walked toward the parking lot. Beverly was terrified. Dad, what if someone sees us leaving? What if Vernon follows us? Let me worry about Vernon. I said, right now we're getting you somewhere safe. As if on cue, Dorothy appeared with Beverly's purse and coat. She'd been my ally in this from the moment I told her what was happening. The car's running, she said quietly. Vernon's distracted talking to his parents about the honeymoon plans. We made it to my Ford F-150 without incident. Beverly sat in the passenger seat while I started the engine. My hands were steady now. Once you have a plan, the nervousness goes away. We're leaving. Now. Dad, I can't just disappear from my own wedding reception. Yes, you can. We'll worry about explanations later. The drive to Fairfield Police Station took 15 minutes through downtown. Beverly was quiet, staring out the window at the Saturday night crowd walking between bars and restaurants. Normal people having normal weekend fun while her world was falling apart. What's going to happen to me, she finally asked. You're going to be safe. Everything else we'll figure out as we go. Officer Danny Martinez was waiting for us when we arrived. Danny had worked on my construction crews for 8 years before joining the police force. He was a good man, reliable, thorough, and he knew how to handle paperwork properly. Roy, he said, shaking my hand. Then he turned to Beverly. Ma'am, I'm sorry you're going through this. Let's go inside and get your statement. The police station lobby was brightly lit with fluorescent lights, institutional green walls, and the smell of bad coffee. Danny led us to a small interview room with a metal table and plastic chairs. The room had a video camera mounted in the corner. Everything would be recorded. First thing we need to do is document any physical evidence, Danny said. Beverly, are you comfortable showing us any injuries? Beverly hesitated, then pushed up her sleeves. The bruises on her wrists were clear, dark purple fingerprints where Vernon had grabbed her. Danny took photos with a digital camera, making sure to get the measurement ruler in each shot. When did this happen? He asked. Yesterday afternoon, Beverly said. We were at his apartment going over last-minute wedding details. I told him I was having second thoughts, that maybe we should postpone the wedding and go to counseling first. What was his response? He grabbed my wrists and pushed me against the wall. He said I was embarrassing him, that everyone was expecting a wedding, and I couldn't back out now. He said if I tried to cancel, he'd make sure everyone knew I was crazy and unstable. Danny was writing everything down. Had he threatened you before? Many times. Usually about money or my friends. He made me delete most of my social media accounts because he said my friends were jealous of our relationship and trying to break us up. He took over my checking account last month, said it would be easier to manage our finances together. I listened to all this and felt sick. How had I missed so many warning signs? As a construction foreman, I'd been trained to spot unsafe conditions before someone got hurt. But when it came to my own daughter, I'd been blind. Danny finished taking Beverly's statement around 11:30 p.m. We can issue an emergency restraining order tonight, he said. It'll be good for 72 hours, then you'll need to go to court Monday morning to make it permanent. What does that mean exactly? I asked. Vernon can't contact Beverly in any way. No phone calls, texts, emails, social media. He can't come within 500 feet of her, her workplace, or any family members. If he violates it, he gets arrested immediately. While Danny was processing the restraining order paperwork, my phone started ringing. Vernon's name appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, but he called back immediately. Then again, he's figured out we're gone, Beverly said, looking panicked. Let me listen to the voicemail, I said, putting the phone on speaker so Danny could hear. Vernon's voice was different than I'd ever heard it, cold and threatening. Roy, I don't know what Beverly told you, but she's obviously having some kind of breakdown. Brides get emotional sometimes. Bring her back to the hotel and we'll talk this through like adults. If you don't, you're going to regret interfering in my marriage. Danny looked up from his paperwork. That's harassment and intimidation. I'm adding it to the file. The phone rang again. This time Vernon left a longer message. Beverly, I know you're listening. You're making a huge mistake. Nobody's going to believe your story. Everyone at that wedding saw how happy we were. Your friends, your family, they all think you're lucky to have me. When you come crawling back, and you will, don't expect me to forgive you easily. Save all these messages, Danny said. They'll help make the restraining order permanent. By midnight, we had all the paperwork filed. Danny walked us to the parking lot. Beverly, do you have somewhere safe to stay? She's staying with me, I said. And tomorrow we're getting her a lawyer. The drive to my house was quiet. Beverly seemed exhausted, like all the fight had gone out of her. When we got there, she sat on the living room couch where she used to do homework as a kid. The house still had some of Martha's decorations, family photos, her collection of ceramic angels, the throw pillows she'd bought at yard sales over the years. Dad, what if I'm making a mistake? What if Vernon really can change? I sat down next to her. Beverly, I've seen a lot of men in my time, good ones and bad ones. Good men don't hurt the women they love, period, and they sure as hell don't threaten them when they ask for help. The next morning was Sunday. I made coffee and scrambled eggs while Beverly slept in her old bedroom. Around 9 a.m., my phone started ringing again. Vernon had called 23 times during the night. The voicemails got progressively angrier. In one message he said, "You have no idea who you're messing with, Roy. I have lawyers, I have connections. You think some small-town cops are going to protect you?" In another, "Beverly's an adult. She made her choice when she married me. You can't keep her locked up in your house like a child." The last one was the worst. "This isn't over. I know where you work, where you live, where Beverly teaches. You can't watch her every second." I saved every message and forwarded them to Danny Martinez. By 10 a.m., Danny called back. "Roy, we need to get Beverly a security detail. This guy's escalating fast. I've seen this pattern before. When abusers lose control, they get dangerous." Monday morning at 9 a.m., I called my lawyer, Jim Patterson. He'd gotten my voicemail from Saturday night and had already started researching domestic violence law. We met at his office on Main Street, a small suite above the hardware store where I'd bought construction supplies for decades. Domestic violence cases move fast if you have evidence. Patterson explained, reviewing the police report and photos Danny had given us. The bruises, the threatening voicemails, Beverly's testimony, this should be enough for a permanent restraining order. "What about the marriage?" Beverly asked. "Is it even legal? Can I get it annulled?" "Oregon allows annulment in cases of fraud or duress," Patterson said. "If Vernon threatened you to prevent you from calling off the wedding, that's duress. We can file the paperwork this week." That afternoon, Vernon was served with papers at his insurance office. His boss, Mr. Richards, called me around 4 p.m. I'd done construction work on Richards' house 2 years earlier, and we developed a good working relationship. "Roy, I had to serve Vernon Hayes with legal papers today. My HR department is asking questions about his character. I can't keep an employee who's got domestic violence charges pending. I understand, Mr. Richards. You've got to protect your business for what it's worth." Some of Vernon's female co-workers have mentioned he made them uncomfortable. Comments about their appearance standing too close. We thought it was just poor social skills, but now, Vernon tried calling Beverly dozens of times that first week, but we'd changed her phone number. He showed up at my house twice, but the restraining order kept him at least 500 feet away. Both times he parked at the end of the street and just sat there for hours. I called Danny each time and squad cars would show up to make him leave. The hardest part was explaining everything to family and friends. Martha's sister Carol drove down from Seattle, confused about why the wedding had ended so abruptly. Some of Beverly's college friends thought she was overreacting or that we should have tried marriage counseling first, but Dorothy was a rock. She'd suspected something was wrong for months and felt guilty for not saying anything sooner. "I should have trusted my instincts," she told me. The way he talked about Beverly like she was a possession, not a person. Beverly's principal at Jefferson Elementary, Mrs. Henderson, was incredibly supportive. She arranged for Beverly to take a week off work and had security walk her to and from her car when she returned. The other teachers rallied around her, bringing casseroles and offering to grade papers when Beverly felt overwhelmed. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Vernon tried contesting it, claiming Beverly had been manipulated by her family, but Judge Thompson wasn't buying it. The evidence was too clear. The photos, the recordings, the pattern of escalating threats. Mr. Hayes, Judge Thompson said during the final hearing, "The court finds clear evidence of domestic violence and intimidation. The restraining order will remain in effect for 2 years, and you're ordered to complete anger management and domestic violence counseling before this restriction can be reconsidered." Vernon's life fell apart piece by piece. Mutual Trust Insurance let him go after they learned about the domestic violence charges. Turns out having a criminal record wasn't good for their corporate image, especially when they were trying to build trust with female clients. He tried getting another job in insurance, but word travels fast in professional circles. Last I heard, he'd moved to California to start over. Good riddance. Beverly's recovery took longer than the legal proceedings. She started seeing Dr. Susan Walsh, a counselor who specializes in domestic abuse survivors. The sessions helped Beverly understand that none of what happened was her fault, that Vernon's behavior followed a predictable pattern that had nothing to do with anything she did or didn't do. The hardest part is trusting my own judgment again. Beverly told me one evening over dinner at Tony's Diner, our usual Saturday night spot. For months, Vernon convinced me that my thoughts and feelings were wrong, that I was too emotional or too sensitive. "Your judgment was fine," I said. "That's why you wrote the note. Deep down, you knew something was wrong, and you asked for help." 6 months after the wedding that never really counted, Beverly started dating Gary Morrison, a 5th grade teacher at Jefferson Elementary. Gary was patient, respectful, and never tried to rush Beverly into anything. He'd been divorced for 3 years and understood that trust takes time to rebuild. The first time Gary came to Sunday dinner at my house, I watched how he treated Beverly. He listened when she talked, asked her opinion about things, and never tried to speak for her. When Beverly excused herself to help with dishes, Gary stayed at the table and talked to me about baseball and his weekend hiking trips. "You don't need to worry about me hurting Beverly," he said quietly. "I've seen what she went through. My ex-wife had an abusive boyfriend before we met. I know the signs, and I know it takes time to heal." A year later, Beverly and Gary got engaged. This time, the engagement was Beverly's idea. Gary had been ready to propose for months, but wanted Beverly to set the timeline. Their wedding was small, just family and close friends at Dorothy's house, with Pastor Williams from the Methodist Church officiating in the backyard. No big reception, no fancy dress, no drama. Just two people who loved each other making a simple commitment surrounded by people who wanted them to be happy. Beverly looked radiant that day, but more importantly, she looked free. Free to make her own choices, free to speak her mind, free to be herself without fear. As we sat on my back porch that evening watching the sunset, Beverly said, "Dad, thank you for reading that note. Honey, even if you hadn't written it, I would have figured something was wrong eventually. A father knows when his child needs help." She smiled, the first completely relaxed smile I'd seen from her in 2 years. I was so scared that day. I didn't know if you'd believe me or think I was just having cold feet. "Beverly, you're my daughter. Believing you isn't optional." Looking back, I learned something important that day. Sometimes protecting your family means more than just loving them. Sometimes it means taking action even when it's complicated and messy and people don't understand. Sometimes it means trusting your instincts even when everyone else thinks you're overreacting. That piece of paper changed everything. 5 words that saved my daughter's life. "Dad, help me. He hurts." As a father, those might be the most important words you'll ever read. And when you hear them, you better be ready to act. The wedding everyone thought they were celebrating was really the day my daughter needed to be rescued. And sometimes that's exactly what family is for. Because at the end of the day, protecting the people you love isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to act when they need you most, even when the whole world is watching and expecting you to smile.